William Cuthbert Faulkner, born in September 25, 1897 in New Albany, Mississippi, America, was one of the most prominent figures in American literature, specifically in Southern literature. He also won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1949 and 2 Pulitzer Prizes for his novels A Fable in 1954 and The Rivers in 1962. He was known for his Yoknapatawpha, a fictional Mississippi county in which the majority of his stories take place, including Light in August, and his unique writing style, such as using the stream of consciousness technique, which is basically a narrative technique where a character's thoughts are written out in a way that mimics the natural flow of our conscious thoughts. And this is done by incorporating rough grammar, unusual syntax, and also incomplete ideas. I'll put the link in the description below in case you are interested to know more about the stream of consciousness. Because of his unconventional writing style, his books are considered by many to be not merely challenging, but at times also impossible to read. His book The Sound and the Fury has frequented many lists of the most difficult books to read. Though Light in August is definitely not The Sound and the Fury, this is definitely still a tough book to read. I still remember this one particular sentence that just confused me the first time I read it, and the sentence is basically, it seemed to him that that bind because of which he had had long ancestors to come himself to be, had allied itself with crime. When I saw that sentence for the first time, I was just like, what? But despite its perplexing prose, it is still a great and tragic novel that explores the repercussions of racism, sexism, injustice, human evils and desires, religion, and many others. And also one that I truly love. The story of Light in August follows the lives of a bunch of outcasts who try to live among the people in Jefferson. There is Joe Christmas, a man who's unsure of his racial heritage and who's being hunted down by the people of Jefferson after he murdered his perverse and biased lover. A woman named Lena Grove who visits the town to find her husband who, unbeknownst to her, decided to abandon her and her baby. Reverend Gale Hightower, a disgraced minister who decides to go against the townspeople demand for him to leave and remain in Jefferson. Lucas Birch, a charming yet irresponsible criminal who is solely motivated by money and nothing else. Byron Bunch, a religious and kind-hearted man whose life is turned upside down when he meets the love of his life. And lastly, Joanna Burden, a woman who is shunned by everyone because she decides to follow her predecessor's footsteps to stand up against racism. Though all arrive in Jefferson for different reasons, their lives mysteriously intertwine as if fate had brought them together to this one troubled town. And yeah, before we get to the good things and the bad things about this novel, I would like to mention that I wasn't able to understand this novel on my own. I had to use some websites like SparkNotes and LitCharts, well, essentially 2 websites that I often mention on my channel. So I'll put the links to both websites and some other websites that I use to help me understand in the description below, in case you guys want to know. Okay, so the story itself is honestly pretty intriguing and quite unique because first, it's not told linearly. We move, from the present into the past and sometimes even further into the past and then back into the present and then back into the past. Just, there is so much time jump in this novel. In addition to that, the novel tends to just throw a bunch of things at you. This happens, that happens, and then suddenly it also introduces you to a new character without any context whatsoever. So most of the time, the novel just leaves its readers in the dark. But when the puzzle pieces finally fell into place, honestly, I found it quite satisfying. Though this novel is certainly not a mystery novel, the mystery element in this novel is pretty great. But while I was waiting for the mysteries to be unraveled, I was enthralled by the memorable characters. Although you can clearly tell that some characters are definitely better than others, these characters are all flawed, essentially morally great characters. For example, there is this one character named Lucas Birch who's essentially a pathological liar. He basically just keeps telling lies after lies after lies, and that's his character. And on the other hand, you have Byron Bunch, who is pretty much a loving and caring person who is also a man of honor and piety. But at one point in the novel, he actually lies to this one person that he loves because he is afraid to lose that person. Another example, there are also a number of characters that consider themselves as abolitionists. Even when they consider themselves to be one of those people who stand up against racism, they still harbor strange yet definitely racist ideas. For example, one of them actually believes that we shouldn't treat black people poorly, but at the same time, we should still understand that they are essentially cursed. Well, that is still definitely racist. Moreover, we also get to know these characters' thoughts, emotions, desires, and also, their background. I guess you can say that these characters represent humans in general. Though we might not be pathological liars, we might still make lies here and there to get what we want. And what's worse is that we might believe that we are right, just like some of the characters in this novel. Oh yeah, one more thing. The main character of this novel, who is Joe Christmas, actually reminds me of another character, and that's Lester Ballard from Child of God, a novel that's written by Cormac McCarthy. I just can't help but compare the two because they are kind of the same, I mean, they are both outcasts, violent, and they are also being hunted down by, their people because of their actions, and also because of the fact that Cormac McCarthy is considered to be William Faulkner's disciple. But in my opinion, I think Joe Christmas' character is far more intriguing because somehow William Faulkner manages to make him both known and yet remain unknown. I mean, we get to know Joe Christmas's past, emotions, and thoughts, but at the end of the story, he is still a strange person. Not only does he become alienated from the society, it feels that he also becomes alienated from the readers, or us. Like I mentioned earlier in the review, this novel also tackles certain issues like racism and sexism, and in my opinion, William Faulkner went all out with these two issues. I was completely baffled by how ingrained racism was in the people's mind at that time, to a point where a mention of someone being black made that person immediately suspicious by a lot of people. And the hatred towards black people is far greater than the love a father has for his daughter. There is this one character in this novel that prefers his daughter to be dead than to have a black grandson. That, in my opinion, is completely insane. The women in this novel are also often degraded and ignored. I mean, Lena Grove is considered by many people in Jefferson to be the one who is wrong, despite the fact that she's the one who tries to remain faithful and also who tries to find her husband. There is also a woman in this novel that is berated by her husband, although she's just trying to show some compassion towards her stepson. But since the husband thinks that her actions are against, God's words, he berates her. Aside from racism and sexism, Light in August is also filled with violence. I mean, people can kill each other just because they have differing views on race. And although Jefferson, the town, is not necessarily a town that is lawless or filled with heathens, religion and laws aren't represented in the best light. Religion is merely seen as a strict set of guidelines that one has to obey, and if one fails to do so, punishment waits. And although there are definitely law enforcers, the white supremacist group KKK can still punish those who think they deserve and get away with it. And all of these horrible things culminate in what one probably calls the history repeats itself. Indeed, some of the characters in this novel actually commit or suffer from the things that happened in the past, either done by themselves or other people. But one can immediately see that this doesn't mean that there is a cosmic plan that has designed everything to be the way they are. It's just that because the people of Jefferson, don't learn from their mistakes. And because of that, they're doomed to repeat the same thing again and again and again. Next, I would like to talk about the truth in this novel, because in my opinion, it's quite fascinating. So at the end of the novel, we can get to know how certain things happen and how these things end. But unfortunately, some of the truths that are revealed are informed to us by other people. So we don't get to see these things happen ourselves. These then creates the possibility of the truth or the information, being filled with biases or maybe incomplete. So maybe that's just a friendly reminder to not take things for granted. Next, there are also a number of characters in this novel that have this sort of clairvoyant-like ability. They somehow manage to know the truth, even though the truth itself hasn't been revealed to them. But sadly, these characters, though they know the truth, they are blind to their own mistakes, viciousness, and basically bad attitudes towards other people. Maybe that's also a reminder, because let's just be honest, for us, at times, it's easier to point out someone's mistake than to notice our own. Next, Joe's true racial heritage. So the novel seems to suggest that he's a biracial, but unfortunately the novel never confirms 100% whether that's the case or not. And in my opinion, this is kind of interesting because William Faulkner does let us dive into his past, but somehow this thing just, still remains unknown. So why is this? In my opinion, maybe this is William Faulkner's way of telling us that it doesn't matter whether he has a black heritage or not. A person isn't supposed to be treated based on their skin colors. Unfortunately though, that's not the case with Joe Christmas, and because of that, his life is fated to suffer before it even begins. Next, I actually admire William Faulkner's prose. Though I did mention earlier in the review that his prose is challenging, it doesn't mean that it is not without merit. In my opinion, his prose is quite beautiful, unique, vivid, detailed, and also strange at times, but in a good way. Here are some of my favorites. Lastly, I would like to talk about the title itself, which is Light in August. In my opinion, the word light here probably refers to the good thing that exists in this tragic world that William Faulkner created. One can probably argue that the light exists at the end of the novel because the novel ends kind of on a hopeful note. Though in my opinion, the novel does kind of end that way, in my opinion, the light actually exists throughout the entire novel, and it is represented by a number of things. It's just that the majority of the characters in this novel decide to turn away from the light. They much prefer to be enclosed, in their own views, their own world, and because of that, they suffer. There are still many other interesting interpretations of the title, and I'll put the links to these interpretations in the description below in case you're interested to know. And before we move on to the bad things about this novel, just a quick reminder, don't forget to support this novel. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribing, liking, and also sharing it, especially if you enjoy it. Thank you. So what are the bad things that this novel has? Well, confusing parts. Sometimes these parts are confusing because of the prose, the time jump, or maybe because it's just plain confusing. I remember this one part where Reverend Gail Hightower listens to music that's being played at a church, and that part is supposed to talk about this, like desire or something that is repressed. I don't know. I didn't know what to make of that, and I still don't know what that part is about. And unfortunately, that's not the only part that's confusing. There are many others. And mind you, this is not his most difficult book. In fact, many people consider this book in particular to be his most accessible book. This is not The Sound and the Fury, and this is not Absalom Absalom. So, at the end of the day, if you want to read this novel, you just have to be patient. Honestly, that's what you need. And you can probably also use some of the websites that I mentioned in this review, like SparkNotes and LitCharts, because these websites not only help you to understand what happened, but also give insightful information about the symbols, themes, characters, and so forth and so on. So yeah, despite all of the bad things, and despite the fact that I haven't probably understood everything the novel has to offer, this is still a great novel at the end of the day. I truly admire William Faulkner's ability to write a complex story, creating complex characters, and also his unique prose. So yeah, at the end of the day, the first novel from William Faulkner that I have ever read gets a 5 out of 5 from me. And yeah, those are basically the things that I have for today's video. And I also would like to apologize because, I haven't been uploading quite consistently, and it's been like months since I last reviewed a book. Maybe 3-4 months, maybe even more than that. And honestly, guys, the reason has always been the same. I think I just haven't been able to balance my, work, my personal life, my booktube channel, my reading. And some of these books are truly challenging to read. I mean, Light in August, it took me more than 2 months to finish it. So yeah, hopefully things will get better. Hopefully I can balance all the things in my life and, be more consistent again. But anyways, thank you for always supporting. Thank you for always being there. And thank you for not giving up on this channel just yet. And with that, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye.